My wife promised her son my business to get him to attend college. Now he's graduated, furious I won't hand it over, and threatening to cut us off. Let me tell you about this mess I'm in. My wife went behind my back and told her boy, Joe, that he could take over my catering company once he finished college. She figured that'd trick him into going to school. Well, he's done now, graduated and all, and he's mad as hell because I ain't giving it to him. He's even saying he'll cut us out of his life over it. My name's Tom, I'm 52 years old, and I tied the knot with my wife. She's 52 years back after we dated for 3. She's got this son, Joe, who's 21, from her first marriage. He just got himself a business degree. Me and Joe? We get along fine, I guess, but we ain't close like buddies or nothing. There's no father-son bond there, and that's okay. His real dad's still around, sees him plenty, so Joe's not hurting for family. Here's where it gets sticky. My wife made this big promise to Joe that after college, my business would be his to run. Now, I've got this catering outfit I took over from my old man when he passed. Been at it nearly 20 years myself, not even counting the time I worked with him before he handed it down. It's doing alright, keeps food on the table, and I ain't planning to step away from it anytime soon, not till I'm ready to retire, and that's a ways off yet. What I can't figure is why she thought she could just offer it up to Joe without even talking to me first. That's my livelihood she's messing with. So, last week, we went to Joe's graduation shindig. Later that night, he took us out to eat. While we're digging into dessert, he starts going on about how he's got it made, no need to hunt for jobs or internships like his pals, because he's got a plan all set. He shoots me this big grin. I'm sitting there, clueless, so I just grin back and glance at my wife, hoping she'd clue me in. She don't say a word, though. We wrap up the meal and head out, since Joe's crashing at his buddy's place that night. On the ride home, I couldn't shake it. I asked her straight up what Joe meant by having a plan. That's when she spills it. She told him, way back before he even started college, that I'd let him take over my company once he got his degree. I was floored. I told her she'd better set him straight, because that ain't happening. He's barely out of school, green as can be, and I'm not about to turn over something I'd built to a kid who's got no experience. I've got guys working for me who've been at it longer, know the ropes better. They'd be the ones I trust if it came to that, not Joe, not now, maybe not ever. She didn't take it well. Started arguing right there in the car, saying I was being dumb, that Joe's a good kid and she's sure he'd handle it fine if I gave him a shot. I shot back that this ain't some experiment. My dad built that business, passed it to me to keep it going strong. You either know how to run it, or you don't know halfway about it. In my book, Joe ain't ready. He's fresh from college, and boys that age need time, need to learn the hard way, because they can't handle the heat yet. I said he ought to go work somewhere, prove himself. If he does good, maybe I'd bring him on down the line, but running the whole show? No way, not for years, if ever. That set her off. She lost it, yelling that I'm selfish, that I don't care about Joe's future or his money troubles. She even said I ain't acting like a dad should, that I'm all wrapped up in myself. I told her she's right, I ain't his dad, so I don't have to play that part. That hit her hard. She got real upset, told me to pull the car over. Then she hopped out and walked home on her own. It wasn't a big deal distance-wise, we were only a couple blocks from the house, so I let her go. Me? I didn't head home right off. I was steamed too, so I swung by a bar to cool off. I reckon she's the one being unreasonable here, and I still think that. Got home around midnight, and she was already out cold, so we didn't hash it out then. Next morning, she acted like nothing happened, so I didn't bring it up either. Couple days later, Joe calls me up, asking about the business. I laid it out plain, his mom never ran that idea by me, and if she had, she'd know I wasn't handing it over. Told him to go find a job like his friends, because whatever she said ain't the deal no more. He thought I was pulling his leg at first, but I made it clear I meant it. Looking back, he dropped hints about taking over for a while now, over the past couple years, but I always chuckled it off, figuring he was just kidding around. If I'd known she'd promised him that, I'd have shut it down early. Well, he didn't take it kindly. Blew up at me, hollering that I'd made fake promises and was selfish, just like his mom said, then hung up before I could get a word in. I was at work, too busy to call my wife right then, so I figured I'd tell her later. When I got home, she was waiting, madder than a wet hen. Didn't even let me get my coat off before she started in, screaming that Joe had called her right after me, tore her apart for lying to him, making him think he'd get my business after school. She blamed me, said it's my fault Joe's cutting us off now, that he don't trust us no more. I told her this ain't on me. I didn't promise Joe nothing, didn't promise her nothing neither. She's the one who fed him that lie for years. If my own mom pulled that on me, I'd probably quit talking to her too, so whatever Joe's doing, it's his call. That pushed her over the edge. She stormed out, crying her eyes out, said she's going to her sister's place for a while. I didn't stop her, I was in a foul mood myself and couldn't see how I'm the bad guy here. That was 3 days ago. She ain't come back yet. We haven't talked, not a call from me, not a peep from her. Total silence. Yesterday, I thought she'd rung me, but nope, it was her big sister, chewing me out for how I've been acting. Said my wife's been a wreck since she left, crying nonstop, feeling like she's losing Joe and me both. That hit me hard, I'll admit I don't want my wife hurting like that. Her sister went on, saying the only reason she lied to Joe was because he didn't even want college at first. He was dead set on joining some band, trying to make it big that way. She wanted him to get a degree, so she dangled my business as bait, figuring he'd bite. She didn't tell me because she knew I'd say no, but she hoped I'd come around once he graduated, see he'd grown into a solid young man. She meant to bring it up with me sometime over the years, but she chickened out, felt it wasn't her place to mess with my company, and Joe ain't my kid. So, I had a chat with my wife's sister after all this went down. I told her I get it, my wife was just worried about Joe's future and all. I ain't blind to that. But I said it still don't make it right for her to go lying to Joe and keeping me in the dark like that. Her sister came back with how she knows she shouldn't be sticking her nose in our marriage, but she wanted me to hear that my wife's ready to patch things up if I just say sorry for coming down so hard on her and Joe. Then she hung up quick, leaving me sitting there, trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wants to fix things with my wife, get us back on track, but the other part's scratching my head, wondering why I'm the one who's gotta apologize when she's the one who messed up here. A whole day's passed since that call, and I still ain't settled on what's next. I did lay it out straight to Joe, told him I wasn't letting him take my business, especially since my wife never even asked me about it first. Here's the first update. I made up my mind, I ain't saying sorry to her. I read some stuff folks wrote online, and it hit me, I didn't do nothing wrong. If she wanted Joe to go to college so bad, she could have come up with a smarter way than telling him a whopper about my business, knowing full well I wouldn't go for it. And even after she said it, she had years to come clean to me, but nope, she waited till he was done with school to drop it on me like a ton of bricks. So, if she wants this marriage to keep going, she's the one who's gotta step up and say she's sorry, not me. It's been near a week since she took off to her sister's, and I ain't heard a peep from her. No clue what's running through her mind or what she's planning, but I know one thing, I ain't crawling back to her, begging her to forgive me like I've done before. She stirred up this whole pot of trouble, so she's gotta be the one to fix it. I appreciate the folks who chimed in with advice, it cleared my head some. She's got this habit, you see. She messes up, and I'm always the guy chasing after her to keep us together. That's worked for her in the past, but not this time. I'm done running. I can't keep being the only one trying to hold this marriage up. Second update, it's been almost 2 weeks since she left, and we hadn't said a word to each other. I was this close to calling a lawyer today, figuring she wasn't coming back anytime soon. But then, out of the blue, she showed up at noon. She ain't said much yet, just that she's sorry for how she acted. That's enough for me right now. I don't know what's going on between her and Joe, though. She looks real down, so I reckon she hasn't patched things up with him. Truth is, I wouldn't even call it a fight, what happened was she lied to him, and now that he knows the truth, he won't talk to her. I hate to say it, but I don't think Joe's in the wrong here. She said sorry to me, sure, but she still tore up about it all, not chatting with me like she used to. The house feels quiet as a graveyard, even with her back. Joe's gone and blocked me. I don't know if he's done the same to her, but if he has, that'd explain why she's so gloomy. She can't even reach out to say she's sorry to him. If she asks me what to do, I'll probably tell her to track down some of Joe's buddies and get them to pass him a message. Might be a little awkward for him, but it'd give her a way to talk. I got no idea what his dad thinks about all this. She ain't told me nothing about that yet. I'm curious, though, what folks make of her scheme to get Joe through college. It worked. In a way, he graduated, but now he won't speak to her, so it kinda blew up in her face. It's a shame, because I know she loves that boy to death and wanted him to get that degree, but it's all turned into a big old mess, and she's got no one to point the finger at but herself. Third update, she's been back 2 days now, and she's been acting strange, real quiet like. But today, we finally sat down and talked about everything since Joe's graduation. She said again she was sorry for promising him my business without checking with me first. I told her it's alright, figured that'd be the end of it. But nope, she broke down crying right there, a total wreck, and it caught me off guard. The second those tears started, I pulled her close, tried to calm her down, but she was past comforting. She sobbed for near an hour, muttering how sorry she was for letting down everyone in her family, saying she wished she'd been a better wife and mom, but she'd failed at both. It was tough to watch her fall apart like that. I felt rotten for not checking on her while she was at her sister's, because she'd clearly been carrying a heavy load. Yeah, she brought it on herself, but she's still my wife, and I should have done something to help. After about an hour, she finally quit crying. I asked if there was anything I could do to lift her spirits. She said all she wanted was to talk to Joe, make things right with him. But like I figured, he'd blocked her everywhere, and she didn't have any of his friends' numbers to reach out. She even tried his dad, her ex, but he told her Joe don't want to hear from her and he ain't helping, since she's the one who screwed up. Said she's gotta sort it out herself. So, I told her I'd figure out a way to get her in touch with Joe. I got right to it, poking around on social media to find his close pals. I recalled this one kid he was tight with, tracked down his profile somehow. Sent the guy a message, hoping he'd see it and hook us up with Joe. We laid out the whole story, and I practically begged him to call Joe for us. An hour later, my wife's phone rang, a number she didn't know. We were sure it was Joe's friend. We picked up, and sure enough, it was Joe. I didn't catch all of it, but I heard her side. She was saying sorry over and over, and I felt for her, knowing how much she cares about him. They argued a good while. She told him why she did it, said he'd thank her for that degree someday, even said she'd lie again if it was the only way to get him through school. Then she started getting worked up. I could see it wasn't going how she hoped. Her face went red, neck all splotchy. I told her to hang up, save it for later, but they kept at it. Before long, it was a full-on yelling match. I could hear Joe shouting too, and she was giving it right back, mean as I've ever heard her. Never thought she'd talk to anyone like that, let alone her own son. She flung some nasty words at him, then ended it by saying he's just like his dad. When she hung up, she was a mess, ranting for 15 minutes about how sick she was of Joe. I let her vent, she needed to get it out. Once she settled, I asked what went down. She said Joe called her a liar, which she owned up to and apologized for, but then he said she's a lousy mom, that she ruined his life by making him go to college when he could have been a musician in a band. Said she killed his dream and he's done with her, called her selfish and cold-hearted. That's when she lost it. Everything she'd done was to set him up good, she said. She knew he'd never make it big with music, tough to hear, but he ain't got the talent, always been a bit off-key. Most of his high school bandmates moved on, but he's still chasing that pipe dream. Reminded her of her ex, she said same deal, where she told him not to start another business when his last one was tanking, and he called her unsupportive. That led to fights, then divorce. That's why she told Joe he's like his father. She said she's always tried to steer Joe right, keep him from dumb choices that'd mess up his life, but now she's done trying. He's too thick to see what's best for him, she reckons. If he wants to paint her as the bad guy, fine by her, she's tired of taking the blame for his and her ex's problems. It was a rough day for her, real heavy, but I'm glad she gave it a shot, even if it fell apart. She messed up, tried to fix it, and if they can't see that, that's their problem. She's cooled off since, and we had a quiet dinner. Didn't mention Joe or her ex after her blowout. She's sleeping now, and I'm hoping tomorrow's better for her. Fourth update, hey, everyone. It's been almost a week since she last talked to Joe. Today, her ex called, said Joe wants to meet her at his place. Said she's gotta come alone, it's a family deal, and I ain't family, so I should stay out. She wasn't having it, told them it's me and her or nothing, 'cause she ain't facing their nonsense solo. They gave in, said I could come, but I gotta keep my mouth shut during their talk. Fine by me, I didn't want to jaw with her ex or Joe anyway. We got there, and they looked ready to haul her into court or something, all stern-faced, probably trying to scare her. Don't work on her, though. We sat in the living room, and Joe jumped right in, said since she made him waste 3 years at college on stuff he didn't care about, she's gotta keep her word and get me to hand over my business. I'd said I'd stay quiet, but that set me off. I cut in, asked if he's lost his mind. Ain't happening, not now, not ever. I don't even like him much anymore. He ain't my kid, and I don't owe him a dime, so I told him straight. His dad snapped at me, said I ain't part of this and to shut up. That got under my skin. This is my business they're yapping about, so yeah, I'm in it. I went back and forth with her ex a bit, but my wife told me to drop it, and she's right, it ain't worth it. I glared at him and shut up. Joe kept pushing, telling her to make me give him the business soon or he's done with her for good. I thought she might waver, but she didn't, and I was proud. She said she ain't doing that. If he can't thank her for setting him up with a future, that's his choice, but he don't get to demand nothing. She said sorry for the lie, but that's all he's getting. She don't owe him more apologies, she was just looking out for him, and if he can't see that, she'd rather he walk away. Her ex piped up, said he'd sue her if she don't follow through. She laughed in his face, asked if he knows a lawyer dumb enough to take his case with no contract, no proof of her promise. He got all flustered, told us to get out. As we headed to the car, Joe yelled at her, calling her awful, but we ignored it and drove home fast. Didn't want to waste another second on them. We're back now, hoping this mess with Joe's done, 'cause that was a pointless trip.